Hey, Di, good to see you.
Just moments ago, the United
Di, play about 10 minutes of this and then I'll switch to the subject matter.
States entered a level of danger many never imagined possible. Not one disaster, not one region, but a convergence unfolding at the same time across the entire nation. Record breaking winter storms have frozen states solid, collapsing roofs, shutting down highways, and trapping thousands in deadly cold. In other regions, relentless rain and sudden flooding have swept through neighborhoods, tearing away homes and forcing families to flee with no warning. Yet what truly unsettles many is the sea itself. Along the coasts, massive waves have overtopped seawalls, swallowing roads and harbors as onlookers freeze in place, waiting for the next surge to arrive without warning. What has shaken the nation is not a single tragedy, but how tightly these signs are unfolding together. Different elements, different regions. One moment, is this simply chaos or a warning? Stay with me, because what comes next may explain why many are calling this the biggest tragedy to ever hit the USA,
Hey, baby,
and
good
why
to
the
see you,
world is
mate.
watching in fear. In recent weeks, the United States has entered a phase of weather that can no
Sunday
longer be
night
described
there,
as
so
seasonal or
people
routine. Across
want to
wide
chill
regions
out.
of the country, extreme cold, heavy snow, violent wind, and sudden flooding are unfolding at the same time, pressing communities from multiple directions without pause. What is alarming is not only the severity of each event, but how closely they are overlapping. Record breaking winter storms have frozen entire states. Cities are buried beneath ice and snow as temperatures plunge to dangerous levels. Powerful winds drive wind chills far below what thermometers show, making even brief exposure outdoors life threatening. In some areas, frostbite can occur within minutes without proper protection. Emergency warnings are issued repeatedly, yet the cold lingers, unrelenting and heavy. Snowfall has not arrived gently. Dense, accumulating snow presses down on rooftops, parking structures, and warehouses. Roofs have collapsed without warning. Vehicles are crushed. Streets disappear beneath layers of ice and snow, bringing neighborhoods to a standstill. Blizzard conditions have shut down highways and airports, stranding thousands of travelers far from home, uncertain when movement will
Diane, that means relative. How's your relative going, Di?
resume. At the same time, other regions face the opposite threat. Relentless rainfall and rapid snowmelt have driven rivers beyond their banks. Floodwaters surge through streets, sweep away cars, and fill homes within hours. Families bracing against freezing temperatures suddenly find themselves fleeing rising water. What should have been separate seasons now collide. Extreme cold, heavy snow, blizzards, flooding. These conditions are no longer arriving one at a time. They are compounding. Infrastructure is being pushed beyond its limits. Emergency responders work under dangerous conditions, often without rest. Hospitals report rising admissions linked to hypothermia, weather related injuries, and accidents. Systems built for predictability are struggling under sustained pressure. But before winter even loosens its grip, flooding begins elsewhere. In other parts of the country, relentless rainfall has fallen for days without pause. Floodwaters continue to surge through streets, sweep away cars, and submerge homes. Families bracing against freezing temperatures suddenly find themselves fleeing rising water. Extreme cold, heavy snow, blizzards, and flooding now overlap so tightly that there is little time to recover before the next crisis arrives. Emergency responders work under life threatening conditions. Hospitals report growing numbers of admissions tied to hypothermia, weather related injuries, and accidents. And yet, the public reaction grows weaker. Reports of collapsed roofs, widespread blackouts, flooded towns, and deaths appear daily. They fill news feeds, scroll past screens, and disappear within seconds. What once caused alarm now barely pauses attention. People sigh, shake their heads, and move on. A tragedy flashes by, quickly replaced by the next headline. Many no longer ask, why is this happening? Instead, the response has become colder, quieter. Just another disaster. Scripture warned of this condition long ago. Amos 6:6 delivers a chilling indictment. They are not grieved over the ruin of the nation. This warning is not about weather patterns or natural forces. It is about hearts that no longer respond to warning, loss, or suffering. In the biblical view, numbness is not resilience, it is danger. The Bible consistently teaches that the most fragile moment for a society is not when calamity increases, but when sorrow disappears. When people stop feeling the weight of loss, Stop reflecting. Stop asking what these events mean. The warning signs have already advanced inward. Disasters do not harden hearts on their own. Repetition does. Familiarity dulls urgency, and normalization replaces discernment. Jesus warned that the final seasons would feel ordinary on the surface, even as distress multiplied beneath. People would continue daily routines, assuming stability, while foundations weakened, not because they were unaware, but because they were unmoved. This is why Scripture places such weight on watchfulness, not to create fear, but to guard against indifference. When catastrophe becomes routine and conscience,
Yeah, 3 hospitals die. That's unusual. Most of our big hospitals have everything in it. We have government hospitals.
no longer stirs,
Our government hospitals are pretty good.
society enters its most vulnerable state, not because nature has grown stronger, but because human sensitivity has faded. If disasters no longer move us, if loss no longer stirs us, what happens when the warnings grow louder and there is no response left? Stay with me, because understanding the human response may be the key to recognizing what these signs are truly asking of us. Just hours ago, California's coastline was struck by a series of powerful ocean surges that left residents stunned and uncertain. Waves rising beyond 16 feet overtopped seawalls that were designed to protect coastal roads and harbors. Water poured inland, flooding streets and forcing urgent warnings across the state. This was not an isolated storm event. It was a sequence unfolding too quickly for the coastline to recover. Back-to-back Pacific storm systems collided with the coast in rapid succession, leaving no pause for the ocean to settle. Southern winds pushed vast volumes of water toward land, while deep ocean swells, borne thousands of miles away, arrived carrying enormous stored energy. At the same time, king tides raised the ocean's baseline, allowing each surge to be.
Diane, I watched a video just before I came on about robots. It went for half an hour, and the really advanced ones, you can't tell if they're robots or human. They really are that good.
In from an already elevated level. What followed was predictable, yet still overwhelming. Beaches disappeared, dunes eroded, seawalls, long trusted as buffers, were overtaken with ease. This was not.
Okay, guys, I'll switch to the Vatican one now. So we got room for Tony or someone at the end. Okay, let's go.
They rushed her back, and I wouldn't let my baby go.
On our channel, I'm Ron Swanson. I'm here tonight with Max, and we're going to be delving into, I think, what a lot of people sort of question is the MK Ultra, the symbolism in media, and of course these religious epicenters that seem to be plagued with nothing but conspiracy and a long trail of proven legal issues. But Max, thank you so much for being here. Can you just tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I do interviews because it is important for everyone on the planet.
I'll find that one I saw. Hang on.
Behind the scenes, because we do have the power to end it, but the first step is, of course, awareness. I myself have been the victim of, I know there's certain words I can't say, so let's see how to say this.
Okay.
Child transportation being given as a party favor out, torture. I was taken repeatedly to an underground facility in Rome. It did connect it with a tunnel underneath. There was a sort of like a magnetic train. It connected to the subterranean levels of the Vatican. So in the facility, I was put through many things, electric shock, isolation, extreme temperatures, like I would be put in a freezer. I can't find it, Di. The brutalization of animals and other children, including babies and adults. I was violated repeatedly. I know I can't say that word, the R word.
You're doing incredibly well, Max. I just want to say
Yeah.
you really are.
Beatings, all kinds of psychological tortures, and MK Ultra type experiments. If you've seen the show Stranger Things, which I made a comparison on, that thing on Eleven's head, I've experienced things like that. And then I was also taken to this room that's well below the Vatican, so people seem to think it's where there's tombs. No, it's well under there. And in that room, I have witnessed babies and small children be sacrificed. There would be a ritual. There would be what you can call elites in attendance. The child is brutalized and then cut from here down with a very special ceremonial knife. There are chalices. The blood is collected. It is drank. This has a name which I can't say on air. It starts with A. And in these rituals,
Diane, they must have taken that robot one down. I just went looking for it, and I only watched it a couple of hours ago, and it's not there.
they are devoted to Lucifer. The Vatican is Luciferian, although they pretend to be Christian on the surface. I was taken to and put through many satanic rituals, some in the Vatican, some outside.
Bobo, MK Ultra is mind control. They cause your body that much pain that your personality splits, and they work the extra personality to what they want it to be. That's what MK Ultra is all about.
At different people's, very wealthy people's mansions. So some might look like a black tie ball, kind of like Eyes Wide Shut. What they portrayed in that movie, except they didn't show the children being brought in. Some would be on the grounds, and they were the hunting parties. So you went and hid, and ran and hid in the woods or in the brush, and they had a lot of fun hunting the children. There would always be the sacrifice.
And I was about to say, I bet that's hospital.
Of at least one at the end of these parties. I have witnessed platters being brought out where the meat is a cooked baby. They eat flesh, they drink blood. They enjoy torture. They enjoy the most brutal types of things that they can do. Things that I probably won't even share because it might traumatize the viewers. There are certain rituals that are done on boats, yachts, that are in the water because there's the law says there's a different law in water, and so they can easily murder after brutalizing the children. They like to chop up body parts, throw them in the water for the sharks. There are rituals that are called the ninth circle. Ninth circle referring
There's that ninth circle again that Trump's involved in.
to Dante's level of hell. Popes attend these. Popes attend the rituals I saw. They go on these boats for those rituals. They're completely complicit. There's a lot of symbolism for those who have eyes to see in the Vatican that shows you what I'm saying is true. So anyway, there were abilities that I had that were enhanced. They train children through trauma. It's called trauma-based mind control. The Nazis had perfected this into a science. Then if you look up Project Paperclip, those scientists at the end of the war were brought to America. That's when the CIA began with their MK Ultra program, which was discovered and is out there as a fact, except they lie and say it was just the use of LSD.
Can I get a couple of cigarettes off you,
They're
please?
omitting the things I just mentioned, which are part of it. And the point of it is that if you torture someone, you fragment the psyche, and then they take those fragments and they program in alters. So they program into people certain abilities, like this is how they make spies, super soldiers, honeypots,
You want to know?
being able to do telekinesis, astral travel. They program psychic abilities into children so that then they can be used to do a lot of different functions. But so there's certain triggers that will bring in an alter to do a task, but then the person doesn't remember it because their front alter, it's all very dissociated. So this is, of course, done deliberately. So that's just a little bit of that. I was able to get out when I was 18.
Are you going to
I was
shop?
in Italy at the time. I came to the United States. I changed
We're
my
having for
name.
dinner.
I got several
You get me
degrees
some
in
KFC for lunch.
psychology. I ended up working with people with trauma initially within
That's
places
when
like
you saw it.
prisons, inner cities,
You going
things
now,
like
are you?
that. Eventually, some of the memories that I had suppressed began to just bubble up and come out. So I did a deep dive in healing work, and then some years after that, I decided to start
Diane, we have 29 million in Australia.
speaking out.
And welfare, we call them dole bludgers. We've got a lot of dole bludgers as well.
Because this still happens to children today. There are about 3 million children a year that go missing, and they're being used in these ways. And I should mention that the Jesuits have worked closely with Mengele. So the Jesuits are mind control experts. The Vatican is kind of, as you were telling me earlier, the Vatican is its own city-state, and that's correct. They're the mind control arm of the global cult.
Okay.
So the Jesuits are one of the most evil people on earth, by the way. And they actually have facilities where they breed children to raise them in these facilities to do these. So in the Stranger Things show, the character 11 was a good example of a child that was bred. Children are also brought in there by their families. They're also kidnapped in various ways. So there's a variety of ways they get children, but some of them they actually breed. And that in that show showed that very well. And that's why when she left, she didn't know a lot about the world. There are actually children that are bred and raised underground and don't ever come up to the surface. It's terrible.
Imagine that.
Anyway, that's a little bit about me.
It was a lot of harrowing information, Max. And I just want to say, everything you're saying, the elites, the religions, the people of power, I'm fully invested in the reality of all of this. The cabal, however you want to summarize it. And hearing just a touch of your story, people are going to be, people always want to know who, right? It's always about the names and who's responsible and the pound of flesh. But the reality of
Wow.
all of that isn't as simple.
42 million die. Wow. Wow.
For survival.
Can you afford them? How can you? Oh, what can you do with that many?
And there is a lot of people who do you mind me just asking?
Diane, even if they want to work, there's going to be no work out there. Now they brought in this AI and everyone's sacking everyone. These 42 million, that's the best they're going to live. It's going to get worse for them.
Me some questions about some of the things that have gone on. Because a lot of people always say, well, how do these survivors survive? And there is a legacy to some of these individuals where they want to see the fruits of their labor out in the world to see just what comes of them. It's a twisted state. And when you discuss the hunts, I've had discussions with a few individuals who've gone through these things, and they mentioned kill switches that can be installed, and you'd mentioned altars and things like this that are being brought forward. Have you had any experience where people have been programmed to, unalive themselves on a switch?
I had, I know I can't say the S word, but I had unalived programming put in me that would be triggered if I ever spoke out. So the first time I spoke out was to a therapist, and it immediately opened it. It was extremely powerful. I would actually drive to a train station near my house, go up onto the platform. It was this huge impulse, this voice in me that would say, jump, 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 and the trains would pass by, and somehow I would keep my feet glued to the platform and not. And then at some point, I would be able to tear myself away and drive back home. And this happened repeatedly for a couple of years. But I learned to discern what was a program in me and what was my own thought. And I knew that that was a program. And even so, it was extremely difficult to conquer. I did. So this is absolutely true.
Let me ask you,
go ahead.
Because you mentioned abilities and forcing certain things that, I'm sure you're the same, that you would agree that a lot of these gifts are within everyone. Yes. And if evildoers can figure out a way of pulling them out and forcing them, that's one thing. Did you notice any correlation between individuals who had a better success with accessing those gifts and being able to fight the programming compared to someone who wasn't as successful with those gifts, and those sort of unaliving switches being more effective?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. I do believe that
Lindsey Graham, the guy in your post there, Lindsey Graham, isn't he Republican?
One factor is the soul of the person. I have had a memory pre-incarnation.
See, I do read your text, of
being at a sort of a meeting and discussing the earth and how it was overtaken by these dark forces. And I remember volunteering to incarnate here, so to speak, behind enemy lines. Because when you're outside, you can't interfere, but you can incarnate and then try and expose things from the inside. So that was my sense, that I chose to incarnate where I did, and I knew I would survive and be able then to use that experience to expose it, because it's us survivors that I think are going to end this by all the exposure all the things we're revealing. So I think one factor is the soul. Another factor is, many children perish.
Yeah, that's what I mean, though. He's working for the enemy.
And so they don't care. They're adults, because those kids were taken by age 2 and super trained in their athletic ability. So they became at a higher level. Yeah. So basically you either rise to the occasion or you perish. That's pretty much the choice, right? So right. They don't care how many children perish. Then they make good use of the ones that have the strength to survive what they put us through.
Yeah, it's a crazy thought process to imagine who's strong enough to survive the mental torture, the fragmentation of the brain, the desensitization, the forced everything, the traumas, all of it. And
yeah, I want to say something about that. They call it when the person is so stressed, you dissociate, and they call it dissociative identity disorder. Yeah. But it's not a disorder. It's actually a very clever coping mechanism. So that's how we survive all of that, because you dissociate it and put it away so that you can keep going. And then later, at some point, it comes back when you're an adult and you can handle it.
I speak a lot about how I think those who use ritualistic and this horrific ongoing trauma of children, they have weaponized DID. Because when a survivor who's in, 20 years after all this has happened, has got a medical file this thick and tries to get legal help and all the rest of it. They use this as a reason for, hey, listen, hey, I know she's got all this evidence, but hey, you might want to take this with a pinch of salt, right? It's so evil, and it's so far gone, the level of evil, to perfect that level of weaponizing this. Because exactly what you said, it is for survival. A lot of people we don't often mention that. It is to save the current mindset from this hideous world. And can you just talk a little bit about how people handle that as survivors when it comes to coming to terms with not only what they've been through, but now what they face with DID?
It's really difficult. My healing process felt almost as brutal as what I survived, because all the compartments opened and things came back. And as an example, the body always remembers even when the mind does not, right? So I had a child, and when I went to give birth, for some reason, the doctor said that even though everything went normally, the baby would not descend into the vagina and come out. So eventually they had to do a cesarean and take my child out. And then I was in a room for a few days, and immediately they wanted to take the baby into the other room with the other babies and clean her up and do all these things. And once they took her, I started to scream and say that they were killing her. So they rushed her back, and I wouldn't let my baby go. And this whole experience, I had no memory, but later what came back to me is I had become impregnated a few times from the violations as a teenager. They like to have people carry the baby almost to term, and then they did a forced extraction of the infant and murdered them. This happened to me several times. So my body remembered. And when later, even though my mind didn't remember, I was reacting to that. My body didn't want to let the baby out for fear that she would be murdered. And then when she was taken, that's what I was literally screaming. And I did not know why I was even saying that. So when the memories begin to come back, it's actually very stressful and confusing, because you think that your life and it's one kind of way or one set of memories, and then all these pieces come back. And mind you, it makes the bigger picture make much more sense because there's holes. So the holes fill in and the puzzle becomes clear. But at the same time, it's very crazy making, because all of us survivors will at some point question our own sanity and think, are we crazy? Did I make this up? Is this even possible? And then, of course, like I said, the pieces fit and the evidence comes in, but it's actually really difficult. It's a very difficult process.
Yeah, it's something that I think a lot of people quickly skip over in the survivor story. Whether that's, I don't mean that almost withholding the information. I mean from someone who's absorbing the story. I don't think we really have any idea of that milestone, And let me just bring you back. Because that was. I mean, it's a lot when you can see just how much you've gone through and where you've arrived at now, Max. It's so prevalent, You talked about the soul, okay, a moment ago. Do you think that, and this is quite deep, and I'm going to just sidetrack this, and then we'll come back to the MK Ultra in a second, right? Do you think that reincarnation and coming back has been something that modern religion has encouraged us to sway away from? Live your life, cross over, go to your place of rest, which then in theory would produce a lot of new souls. There wouldn't be a lot of older souls. Do you believe that we're seeing possible in individuals like yourself, where older souls are the ones who have managed to make it further when it comes to transportation, or it comes to the evils of because your body reacted in that way, like you talked about with giving birth, because it remembered something. And when we often talk about the soul, we don't give enough credit to just how marvelous and wondrous it is. So do you believe that older souls are better prepared for dealing with this level of horror?
Yeah, and so I'm going to reveal some things that I know, and some of it's going to sound a little out there. But so old souls, yes, but also souls that incarnate from other, let's say, planets or places in the universe.
Off-world, yeah, off-world, of course.
That are of much higher frequency. So are willing to incarnate in a very dark, low level, low consciousness, high density planet. So we may come from places where the consciousness is much higher. So that's an age, I guess, of the soul itself, right? Now with reincarnation, there is something that, you call it the cabal, I call it the global cult. There's
Yeah, let's go with it. Yeah, 100%. Global cult's fine.
They have had we're multi-dimensional beings, but they have put a ceiling on us and kept us in very low levels of what we are actually capable of.
I agree.
But they have technology that's on the planet, but also off the planet. Okay, so what has happened is they're very clever, and they have actually forced reincarnated us. So there has been a technology that's gone from the moon to Saturn. When I was a child, I see things with the inner eye, and I saw it as this gray veil over the planet. So they would it was like a net. And so when you left your body upon death, they would say, go to the light, but it was a false light. And they would lure people there and then reincarnate them back into their system. One of the benefits of that is that you don't return to source. So you bring back all your unresolved traumas in the next incarnation. Hence, a lot of people remember that, right? They say, I was hung before or whatever.
But also things like, for example, I have the most bizarre fear of heights, and it's not a fear of the height. It's a fear of someone pushing me over the edge of it. I have this clear residual. It's weird, right? And it's the same with watching things being cut, right? So if there's a movie and someone's cutting themselves or something like this, it's obviously fake, right? It's a movie. You know what I'm saying? My brain I feel it all. It makes it all so real. And I often wonder about that because I've not gone through any weird, knifey traumas or fallen off anything or any of these things. But it makes me wonder about 100%. So these are sort of my relatable data point entries when it comes to residual stuff. And I just wanted to ask you about that because a lot of people in my circles believe the same as you and I, Max, and that there is a lot of wonder to our DNA that is off-world, it's on-world, and there's a lot of things that we don't get told. I'm sure Admiral Byrd, if he was still here and alive with us today, would have a few things to say about that ice wall and the last trip ever to that region of the world. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that humanity is getting to the point where it's laughable to think we got to where we are without anything interfering. You know what I'm saying? So let's circle back to the process of these individuals. You talked a little bit about farming, you talked about missing children, all of this. I've often said there's nothing better for evil than a natural disaster in a third world country. You know what I'm saying? Once you have all of these already partially documented individuals, now parents and infrastructures are gone. There's a lot of that. In your, sadly, in your experience, where were these children coming from? Like, was it mixing and matching? And again, I hate to break this down in such a way for you, but did you see different individuals facilitate different types of sourcing these kids? So was there street grabbers? Was there people that dealt with the families that were totally cool with all of this and wanted their kids to just be used by these monsters? And if so, how broad and widespread is the network?
Well, the network is global, so it's everywhere. It's infiltrated. Governments of countries are the lowest rung on the hierarchy of this global network. And presidents, by the way, prime ministers, heads of state, they don't actually have any real power. They're puppets, they're actors on a stage, doing the bidding of the levels of the hierarchy above them. So to answer your question, so some children, like I said, are bred in these facilities. The Jesuits do this a lot. They will create an embryo, they will enhance it, and they will implant it into captive women. So in Stranger Things, and towards the end, they had a scene where they showed all these pregnant women strapped down. That is real.
Let me ask you, are they seen as the higher investment or the low? So are they produced for regular fodder, or are those the ones who are investing in development?
They're just a womb.
They're just a womb. Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, children are bred. They're implanted into captive women who are just a womb, and then when the woman gives birth to the infant, they're actually sacrificed.
Okay.
So that's one level of how they get children.
Okay.
Another level is through Child Protective Services, foster care system. Medical kidnapping, which is pretty popular now. So they will bring in these kids. Another thing is wars generate orphans. So any kids that are in these kinds of situations will be fodder for this. And then there are bloodlines and families that are involved in the network. The network will have many levels. So whatever families are involved at local levels, at national levels, at global levels, those children will also be brought in. If you have probably heard this with celebrities, that they're asked to give their firstborn as a sacrifice to trans them. You know, this is pretty common. So one thing I'll say is a lot of these important, quote, elite families, they will put their own children through these things because they will create these different altars. They'll literally be groomed for future leadership roles. That's the way that they do it. So there's a combination of all kinds of ways that children are brought in.
It's really interesting that you bring the altar state as controllable versions that can manifest for control purposes. Now, just bear with my brain's not as educated on terminology and things like that. But that's what makes sense when people say, "Oh, they were bred to be in power." Well,
yes,
it always makes you scratch your head, right? Well, sure, but at some point you're going to, hit your mid-20s and go, "I think I might be part of a bloodthirsty, sacrificial family and should probably do something about this." But when you imagine you've got the face, the brand, right, and then you've got the puppet masters behind. It's DID and using these altars to bring forward the person that is the one who's controlled. That's just put a massive piece into a puzzle for me, Max, if I'm being honest with you. You just sort of connected some of the dots for...
I can tell you something else. So anyone who's going to enter any kind of global leadership position, so high up in any level of society, they will be put through a ritual first where they need to violate.
My bet would have said spastics die, but he's come out with psychics. I was thinking he was trying to spell spastics.
And unalive a child. That's filmed, it's stored. So there's blackmail material. That's another facet of the situation. And then there's also the facet that in rituals I've been in and seen, these people and people in Hollywood I've seen on camera, they literally say it. They say, "I've sold my soul to Satan." So they can, through rituals, take in dark entities to run them. So they will actually surrender themselves to be inhabited by a demonic entity. And they consider this a privilege. And if you think of all these people at the higher echelons, what they get
Lady Gaga says she has problems sleeping because she has all these demons in her dreams.
out of it is fame, wealth, power, control. And because these people are, ego is their highest threshold, they've cut off their connection to the life force, to the creator. So that's their ceiling. And so they are willing to do anything. You know, human beings can be pretty easily corrupted. And so that's how they get people, through the blackmail or through the enticements.
Absolutely. And people often say, well, they can't all just be, PDF files and child predators, and they've all got together. Well, listen.
Yeah, they are. If you're at a certain level, you're filed.
100%. But you got to understand, some of these people are doing it just for money and power. Okay, they're so disconnected. And listen, when I started my journey on being awoken and all the disclosure and realizing my own capabilities, Max, there was a lot of my friends who were like, it's all about love. It's all about love. As long as you've got love, it's fine. And it finally clicked, Max, right? That evil, because good and bad has to exist, right? The wolf has to eat the stag. Bad for the stag, good for the wolf. That's the balance of our world, okay? But evil, true evil, the things that you've witnessed and gone through, are only capable of manifesting where love is incapable of being. And people that want to blame it on demons and all these things, a demon can lure you to the things that you can make a bad choice to do. It's the free will and choice of man. Man is the only thing capable of manifesting evil, okay? And dark forces and whatever you want to list it as can lead you to the doorway, but you as the individual are making the choice to do those, to manifest the evil. And it's funny because there's no way in the world anyone capable of love, as we know it, Max, could fathom what children and people like yourself have gone through. And it sounds so simple how we have been conditioned by the modern world, by the three big religions, all of this, that we need to put our faith outwards. And if we believe and love ourselves, it sounds so hippie and tree huggery because of how simplistic it is, Max, right? But it's true, right? And we as humans, we want things to be complex. We want it to be something that we need to understand. And the realities and the subtleties of the world and magic and all of this are things that we just miss now. People are just not picking up on them, and we're isolated, and we're going backwards in my eyes in society in a lot of senses. Do you think that this disconnection, right, that we have from normal community and each other has fueled the capability for these elites because we're not watching out for each other as much?
Yeah. So first of all, a psychopath, which they are, they don't have the capacity for empathy or love. And so they actually, they enjoy the sadism that the things that they do to the children. People can think, oh, well, you need to love those perpetrators. They cannot, they harvest our energy because they're cut off. So they're basically parasitic.
Thank God it's the end of 2025. That was my worst year since I've been free.
So they use our life force and us to create essentially the hell on earth reality we inhabit today. So that's actually good news for us because we can withdraw that and create a different reality if we so desire. They don't understand love, so they think it's a weakness, but it's actually our strength. But yes, they have deliberately and very methodically socially engineered society to where we are today, where it's essentially Luciferian. Their values of moral relativism and, the PDF file kind of society we see there, where children at younger and younger ages are,
There's nothing really new here. We've heard all this before.
dressed in these manners, and the culture has been groomed.
Bear with me, guys.
When I was a child, which is, I'm in my 60s, so this was way back when, I overheard, I was trained in an audiographic memory, so I overheard the plan was to normalize PDF file,
Mhm.
and then also to normalize Luciferianism. And if you look out there today, you see both things right in your face. They have achieved this.
Yeah.
And so they have slowly engineered us away from community, from compassion. And then that tech factor comes in, the smartphones and the wearable tech, and the goals, of course, to implant things now in the body. So it's merging us with machine and stripping away that, and then everything has gone from local to global, because with global they can exert complete control. So now people live in big cities are by.
Like I said, guys, we're not learning nothing new here. We know all this. So I'm going to switch to something else. I've never seen this channel before. I watched a bit of it. I just passed it. Yep, there it is.
Technology would have even been available.
And intense.
Back in those times, that technology was not possible back in those times.
Atomic.
Yeah.
To leave almost like a photographic imprint on a piece of cloth. A first century Hebrew male, because the hairstyle was from the first century, that he was about 6 feet tall.
I told you, he was 6 feet tall. Archaeologists have finally found something that proves that God is 100% real. This is one of the biggest discoveries that humankind has ever made so far, because they just found the sulfur balls and an entire city that is complete.
Okay, Bobo, what went wrong in 25? My fuse box blew. I had to get a new fuse box. My electricity went down for 4 days from a storm. Then I had to get a new modem. Then my TV blew up. I had to get a new TV. Then my tablet blew up. I had to get a new tablet. And then I got sick and was put in the hospital twice. And it just never ended. Everything could go wrong last year. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. It was the worst year I ever had. It just, yeah.
It burned down and was submerged under the water. And now that the entire river is dry, and archaeologists just discovered that there is a whole entire city that looks exactly as mentioned in the Old Testament, also known as the Torah. And for those of you guys who...
Yeah, we put the clocks forward. I'm an hour forward now. We're in daylight savings now.
Who don't know, there was a city named Sodom and Gomorrah, which had a massive civilization of humans that were committing sins, which is very similar.
No, when America changes the clocks forward or backwards than we do, it puts us out of whack with Diane, because I do it on Diane's timeline.
What we do these days in our generation. One of the craziest sins that God was really not happy with back in those times was the thing that is also growing in our current generation, which is known as the LGBTQ, and homosexuality being normalized was the biggest sin back in those times that God was not able to tolerate. And obviously, for those of you guys who haven't read the Torah in the Old Testament, back in those times, God was not really very merciful, to be honest. So when God witnessed that this city named Sodom and Gomorrah was...
Why do you reckon that was? Why do you reckon God was such a hard ass in the Old Testament, but such a loving guy in the New Testament?
Committing excessive sins, he decided to rain down millions of fiery sulfur balls. And what does these sulfur balls do? It basically just burns down the entire city, with all the men and women and children and basically all the livestock, everything completely destroyed because of all the sins becoming excessively generalized back in those times. And back then, God really liked this one dude named Lot, who was someone that also lived in the same city. But then God ends up warning Lot and his family in order to leave before he rains down the fiery sulfur balls into the city and destroys it completely. Now, this is what happened in the Old Testament of the Bible, or even in the Torah. But what's interesting is...
Bobo, they're talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. We know where Sodom and Gomorrah was, and where it is, there's still pillars of ash and little balls of sulfur embedded into it.
is that there is this archaeologist named Expedition Bible on YouTube. He ended up going to
On
this
the site?
location where the Sodom and Gomorrah city is located. And here he found out that the entire city was completely burned down. And if you walk down into the city, you'll
Locally
actually
in
find that
Numera.
it is completely
And
filled.
this is the site
with
that the
sulfur
archaeologist associated with.
Look at this stuff. Every single thing in the entire place is like completely burned down. The whole mountain and the valleys and everything, it's completely burned down. And currently it looks like a mountain, but then back in those times, it was an actual city with millions of people living in there. So the whole thing was completely destroyed. So the entire city was completely destroyed, and it was burned down to ashes by the sulfur balls that started raining down from heaven.
So here you can see that ashy layer that's just underneath the surface. This is full of burned pottery. It's full of the fragments of human
Wow.
bones. The question is what evidence is there of this burning sulfur that rained down? Well,
Look at that stuff.
it seems that the culprit are these sulfur balls that are also found in this area.
That's
Check that out, Bobo. That's pretty important. That's an important discovery.
crazy, dude. So obviously, you know that if you go down to this location and if you start digging, you'll see a lot of human bones from back in those times. And there were millions of people that used to live in the city, and everybody were burned down because of all the sins that they've been committing. Now here what happens is that the archaeologists, they try to research the location and see if they can find any sulfur balls, but then there were not many sulfur balls left in that location because the property of a sulfur is in such a way that once it starts burning, it doesn't stop burning until it's completely consumed 100%. So no matter what it is, it's not going to stop burning, and it's going to burn each and everything in its way, including the entire city and its people with it. Now obviously this means that all the sulfur balls that kind of just rained down in the city is almost 90% already consumed by the fire. So there were only very few pieces that was left.
What happens if you overfire a brick in a other not an oven? What do you call it? Well, if you heat the brick too much, the brick will crumble.
Out, which the museum started collecting, and they kind of just kept this in there because this was some sort of a biblical museum that you can go down to Jerusalem and you can actually take a look at.
Yeah,
the stuff.
kiln.
You can actually go
What's a brick do in a kiln when it's overcooked? It falls apart and crackles.
down to Israel to this archaeological museum, and you'll actually find that they have all of these historical monuments saved down in this museum. And here you can see this is basically what the sulfur looks like, which rained down from heaven. And that's because obviously, as we have already spoken, sulfur, once it starts burning, you can't really preserve it. It's basically going to get.
And Bobo, there would have been a lot of timber in the city, a lot of timber structures, because they didn't have mass manufacturing like we got for our houses. So they would have had sort of would have been put together well. It was a full-on city, so it had full-on economics. And I'm guessing it had a lot of plywood and that to build the houses and stalls. Not everyone lived in the stone houses, I don't think.
Completely consumed unless it lands into some sort of a water body, which means that there was also a massive river near the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. So the archaeologists decided that the river that was flowing all the way from Sodom and Gomorrah that was connecting to the Euphrates River, which is now almost dried up, and this is also something that you can see in the prophecy of Revelation in the Bible, that it already says that the river is going to be completely dry, and after that happens is when the Antichrist is going to be showing himself. And what the archaeologists did is that they went to this site where the river is now completely dried up, and to their surprise, they noticed that there was an entire city that was completely submerged, which for the very first time, they were now able to go ahead and take a look at this massive city with all the archaeological
That's not Sodom and Gomorrah.
evidence, digging up
He's on a complete wrong trail here, isn't he, Diane?
stuff. And now, luckily, they ended up finding something fascinating. Just take a look at this.
How many? So this is a sulfur ball. Sulfur balls. All these are sulfur balls. Here, here, here.
Oh my
Look
goodness.
at all of them. There. Sulfur ball. sulfur ball.
And this is the place where like the entire city was like completely burned down. And these sulfur balls, can you believe it? They just rained down from heaven. This was from God
Everywhere.
himself. And this is the place where there was like a massive river flowing down. And right now it's like completely dried up. And the sulfur balls that landed into the water, they still survived because they were not consumed by fire because of the water body that was present in there. So these sulfur balls, they ended up landing all around here. So if you go down to this place, currently it looks like a mountain. The entire place is going to be filled with thousands and millions of sulfur balls that is already mentioned in the Bible. And the archaeologists, they start digging this stuff up. Look at that stuff. You can basically find sulfur balls all over the place. And that's insane. I think he also tries to burn it in order to show us like how this works.
Formation,
Look at this
you
stuff.
can see sulfur balls.
It's stuck everywhere, like in all the places, like the mountains,
That's an actual building.
and anywhere you just go by, you're gonna be
What's
finding these
called
sulfur
in
balls.
situ, in place. They're placed right here in this particular layer. So
That's insane,
Fire.
man. That's a huge sulfur ball. And these things only survive because of water.
so what they're doing is they're eroding out of this,
Mm-hmm.
right, and then washing down in the ravines.
That is
And
crazy.
so you have all of these preserved in this geological layer that goes and goes and goes, and so that's where that's coming
crazy.
from.
And then he also tries to burn this thing up, I think.
But be
Look at that
careful
stuff.
because, man, when you get a whiff of these
And it
things,
just gets consumed completely. Look at that. This is basically how it looks like when it's like burning, and it just comes
It's
raining down. Imagine millions of these sulfur. And it's going to be pretty much the same as how raindrops are just falling in when there's like massive heavy rain. But then instead of raindrops, you're going to be having these sulfur balls that are fiery. And there are millions of them that just fell down and burned down the entire city into complete ashes.
this is one of the reasons why
Look at that stuff.
sulfur balls would only be preserved in water. If they
Mhm.
strike the land, then they're going to burn up. You can see the goo; it's just melting down to goo and then dripping
That looks
off.
like a marshmallow.
So really, anywhere that they would have landed on land, they would have burned up like this, and they would have burned anything flammable around them. This is how the cities and the plain
That's
were burned.
crazy. But that's not it, because we also have another fascinating discovery that the same
No, Bobo, because the sulfur from a volcano, I don't know the percentage, but let's just say it's 70%. These sulfur balls are 100%. They're not found on the planet Earth. They come from God's storehouse.
archaeologists have just found. Where in the Old Testament and Torah, it also mentions that Lot and his family were spared, and God asked them to never look back and just keep running forward while the city is going to be completely burned down into ashes. And if any of you turns around and looks back at the city, God said that you will be cursed to turn into a pillar of salt. Now, this is where all the things went wrong, because while they were running, Lot's wife decided that she needs to turn back around and take a look at what's happening to the city. So once she did that, she was cursed and she turned into a pillar of salt. And guys, watch this closely, which is undeniable proof of Sodom and Gomorrah, the body of Lot's wife, which is completely turned into a pillar of salt, which also kind of looks like a womanish figure, but then it's a pillar and it's completely made out of salt. That's right next to Sodom and Gomorrah
This is
as they were
believed to be
running
the
away. Just take a
actual
look at this
remains
stuff.
of Lot's wife,
Look at this stuff.
discovered near the Dead Sea, close to where Sodom and Gomorrah are thought to have been located. There is an unusual pillar that some claim is Lot's wife.
Look at that stuff.
Archaeologists have studied its
So apparently this, it kind of looks like a pillar. At the same time, it's very disfigured. She is the woman that turned into the pillar of salt. So they decided to go ahead and test the substance of whatever this rock-like substance is looking. They found out that this whole substance is made out of 80% of pure salt. And that's
strange
just
shape
crazy.
and found that it is composed of 80% salt. What makes this discovery so intriguing is that the Bible says God turned Lot's wife into a pillar of salt when she looked back at the burning cities. While it has not yet been confirmed whether she is encased within the salt, the site provides compelling evidence. This includes
That's
millions
crazy.
of pure sulfur balls, mountains of ash covering ancient buildings, and clear burn marks found throughout the area. The site also aligns perfectly with the biblical timeline and location described in Genesis.
I wonder if you dug into that ash, them ash buildings. I wonder if there'd been any gold stashes there. You'd think there would be, wouldn't you?
Including Lot's cave, where he hid during Sodom's destruction.
So when Sodom and Gomorrah was destroying, Lot and his family, they kind of decided to go ahead and hide in a cave. So this right here is the cave in which Lot and his family were hiding when the entire city was burning down. So, and the archaeologists, they also managed to find out the cave in which Lot and his family was hiding. So all of these stuff,
This cave is
it's just
located near the ruins
undeniable
of the city
proof.
and
And look at this
matches the
stuff.
geographical details provided in the biblical account. Local legend and archaeology also support the claim.
And Dai's still going for a bit longer too. So I agree, this is done well.
Early Christians building a church around it as a sign
I love this sort of stuff.
of reverence, further adding credibility to the discovery.
That's
This is
crazy, man.
believed to be the actual remains of Lot's wife. Discovered near the Dead Sea, close to where Sodom and Gomorrah
It does look like someone's looking back.
are thought to have been located.
That is
There is an
crazy.
unusual
That is
pillar
just
that some
crazy.
claim is Lot's wife.
So honestly, guys, I really don't know what to say. In order to going out there and exploring and finding out some of these historical evidence, and they've been doing some crazy research out there, man. And honestly, I really wanted to go ahead and make this video because a lot of people, they don't really understand that the scriptures and the Bible and the Torah and these all things are actually real. And
Yeah.
everything that's written in there is an actual historical event. Like all the different histories, like we humans have, like the Romans and the Greece empires, and we also have the Vikings that invaded England. And if we can believe all of these historical events to be real, but there are still some people out there in the world that find the scriptures of God very hard to be believable because they don't really have any solid proofs. And that is the reason why I decided to go ahead and take the time of my day in order to go ahead and make this video. Archaeologists have just found the remains of Noah, the man who's built the infamous ark as mentioned in the Bible.
They found Noah's wife. She was 8 foot tall.
It pays to be prepared, starting with UE watercraft insurance and making sure you pack the.
Do you know how magical this thing is? Just 3 seconds. It can shave your beard smoother than your wife's skin. And there are no black spots left.
Oh, that looks like a
My
good
wife loves
razor.
using this shaver the most.
Phil would be jealous of this.
There are no stubble on my skin. It's as smooth and tender as my.
Now, this new discovery
Hey,
has just
Talia.
found the bones of Noah and his family all the way in Mount Ararat, which is the same place where the Ark of Noah is currently resting. And the bones that the archaeologists found is not any regular human bones. Let's go ahead and take a look at the proof that we have just found about the remains of Noah.
The government of Turkey claims they have found the grave of Noah. This is a normal human thumb bone. Underneath is a giant human thumb bone.
But this right here, it's just compared to like the original human thumb bone to like the Noah's thumb bone. It seems like he was a massive human in size.
This was found right near Mount Ararat.
That's just like this part of the bone right here. Like this particular part, it's so huge compared to like Noah's bone. Like our bone is only so much, and Noah's bone is apparently this big, and it's just this tiny part of the bone, and that's what they're basically just finding.
People say
around
one
here.
man and 3 boys could not build a boat that big.
That's true.
Oh, you didn't see those boys. Hey, Bubba, bring me
And it took them 120 years, so that's reasonable.
that tree. Would
And God would have given him the knowledge to do it. It's not like he knew how to build a ship.
yeah. There's a jawbone in a hotel in Turkey on display right now.
Wow, look at the jawbone difference. This is basically how the jawbone of Noah's looked like.
6.5 inches.
So this is our human bone, and then this is Noah's jawbone.
These giants were pre-flood. The atmosphere is a lot different, and the atmosphere grew their growth, caused their growth. Our atmosphere's changed a bit. That's why we're not giants.
And this is like his sons and all that stuff. So there is a non-petrified human jawbone that was found in Turkey near
From
the
the
same
TMJ.
mountain
Any one of you could put your head inside and rattle it back and forth inside the jawbone.
Wow.
The legend in Guam is that giant people built the latte stones there. Who was moving these giant rocks anyway?
That's true.
That's a camel in front of it for scale, folks.
So the camel is right over here, if you guys can see.
Diane, Lord, please let Diane's relative get in the hospital and get treated properly. We pray on Diane's behalf for her friend. Please look after her and get her settled down in the hospital, Doc. Jesus, thank you. Amen.
This is how small or tiny the camel is, and we humans are like really small compared to that. Back in Noah's time, they used to move such huge rocks. It just seems very impossible in a very practical way if you think at it. You actually need some equipments, machineries, and all that stuff in order to move such heavy weights. But then back in those times, it seems like they very easily moved these things.
In Wasaukie, Wisconsin, 100 years ago, giant skeletons were found in a burial mound. One of the skulls was 3 times the size of ordinary humans. In Walkertown, Indiana, 8 giants ranging from 8 to 9 feet long, all wearing heavy copper armor, were found. Through the bungling of the diggers and the disinterest of the museum establishment, the discoveries were scattered and lost. The Smithsonian has been very active in hiding discoveries about giants because it goes against the evolution theory. See, evolution says we started off tiny and we're getting bigger and better and stronger and smarter. I think the Bible indicates we started off bigger and we're getting smaller and weaker and dumber.
So yeah, obviously, the government wants us to believe that the evolution of us coming from apes was like the reality. But then the Bible obviously says, and there's even archaeological proof, like take pyramids, for example. Obviously, apes did not build those things. So if we just evolutionized from apes, then who the hell built those pyramids? Who the hell built all of these ancient archaeological evidence that we currently have? But then the Bible already says people who lived before us, like Noah and his family, and some of these ancient people from the scriptures, the Bible, the Torah, and all those stuff, these scriptures are actually real, and there are scientific and archaeological evidence that is currently present in order to back up all of those claims. But then there's nothing apart from us matching our DNA, which is kind of similar to the monkeys and apes. But apart from that, there's nothing in common between us and the monkeys. They have never evolutionized. We still have the chimpanzees, we still have the apes. It doesn't mean that they are evolutionizing or growing into something else, even after all these years. They're still monkeys. They're dying monkeys, being born monkeys, and there's nothing different from them from many generations. So that's where the evolution theory that the government wants us to believe is just basically omitting all of these archaeological evidence that these great archaeologists have been finding that is related to the Bible. What's interesting is that this is exactly the same place in which the same man named Ron Viet, who's actually the archaeologist who also found the Noah's bones and his remains and his family's remains, as well as the same guy who also found the Ark of the Covenant, which seems to be resting all the way down below the mountain in which Jesus was crucified. So right beneath the mountain, he took permission from Israel and he started digging all the way deep inside. There is the box, which is the Ark of the Covenant that lies inside. Now, he's the same guy who also found Noah's Ark, which is resting in the Mount Ararat. Now, take a look at what Ron Viet has to say about the discovery that he's made.
We believe that God has preserved in the earth and under the seas remains of the major events discussed in the Bible. Physical remains, chemical remains, and things that you and I can see, feel, test, and in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah and its sulfur, even taste. These things have been preserved by divine power to a point in time when by satellite TV relay systems and the ability to translate everything of interest into most everyone's language, these things can be shown to the inhabitants of the...
And somewhere right around this area, they also found the grave of Noah. So take a look at what he has to say about the grave of Noah.
Right off in this area were 2 grave markers, and we have those on film at home. I took them in 1977. Now, we made a little booklet and made sketches of all these things. And one of the people, a real good Christian, so I gave him one of these books. And finally, he found somebody that knew where this was, paid them $400 to dig up Mrs. Noah's grave. And again, I have the description of the people that interrogated the guy that dug it up, and some of the folks that saw it as it migrated westward and was eventually sold for over $100 million on the black market.
Wow. So it seems like people, whoever dug the remains of Noah's wife, they actually sold the remains for like $100 million in the black market. I wonder what they're going to do with it. We never know what kind of intentions people basically have around the world. But yeah, it seems like they actually did get their hands on Noah's actual remains, and it was the same guy, Ron Viet. And this right here is like the great stone.
I only heard about these skeletons of Noah and his wife in the last 3 weeks. I've never heard of it before.
Which was used on Noah's grave, basically.
Like this. It's as if God had preserved this piece for that very moment for them to see. And what's interesting about it, the Bible says that they use gopher wood.
Yes. So it's like a very special kind of a wood, which even after thousands of years, it wouldn't just break off or like wouldn't crack and wouldn't just decompose.
We've discovered that this is laminated like plywood.
Yes.
Many thin layers put together, which would make it super strong.
If you look at it, it almost looks like they were making something.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like it was making some pins. Maybe they were pouring, maybe it was a wooden mold for steel pins or something.
So these were the equipments used in order to like build the Noah's Ark. And then we even have like a lice of that wood which was used in order to build the Ark, which is right there.
These are all petrified. This was the top of the boat. And it's lighter color petrification.
Yes.
And you get to the bottom of the boat, and the metals made everything darker when it petrified.
That's crazy.
Deep.
And then they end up finding the massive bone of Noah, which is way huge compared to humans.
And
that's the remains that they found so far.
Okay, this is when Ron entered the cave system. And when he first entered the Ark of the Covenant cave, the stalactite you see there was in the opening. And he broke it loose so they could crawl through that hole into the cave system. And that's the actual stalactite from the cave system. And it shows the type of material that's in the cave. It's very hard. It's limestone that's turned into this hard substance. This is the bones of someone that didn't turn to ash completely at Gomorrah.
So that's obviously Lot.
So they burned up, but they didn't quite turn to ash. And they preserved their bones. So that's what's left of someone from Gomorrah.
So this basically proves that there were survivors, and the survivors most probably that should most probably be Lot and his family. Obviously, his wife turned into a pillar of salt, and then the rest of them who actually survived, their remains.
Bobo, they do time traveling already. They know how to time travel. I'm not sure they can take your actual body into the past, but they can take your conscious into the past.
Which is not really completely burned, but at the same time, it's kind of half burned. They're half dead, half alive. That's the kind of discovery that the archaeologists have officially made. And this basically proves that everything that we've read so far in the scriptures is actually real. And this right here is the gravestone, which is basically shown to you.
I'm from the future. It's up past 12 here, Nelly. Monday, user in Sunday. I'm from the future.
In the video just a couple of minutes ago. So this is the wooden material that was used in order to like create the whole.
And I'll make a prediction. This time tomorrow, Bobo's dishes still won't be washed.
Whole cemetery of Noah's family. So they kind of just built this whole thing in, and they have a bunch of cross everywhere. We don't know why they have like these cross, but obviously Jesus came many years after, but still they had all of these cross that's like engraved into these wooden chips. So it's very bizarre to know that we actually have all of these artifacts that is now officially being found by archaeologists. And this just gives us a lot more evidence to prove that everything that we have known so far, everything that we've seen in the scriptures read, is actually true. Something crazy is happening in Jerusalem as we speak. And if you're someone that's been following the Jewish cultures, then you probably know what the holy fire is. But this usually takes place every...
I gotta say that Israel, that Jewish language, it's not a pretty language. It don't roll off your tongue. It's all guttural, like Arabic.
Single year when Jesus was crucified, and after 3 days he rose back. Where there is a miracle that happens where people visit this location and they actually get to see the Holy Spirit of Jesus Christ himself. And this only happens for a very short time, like for a couple of minutes. And then the Spirit of God ends up ascending back into heaven. Now, I'm going to show you something in this video that's going to absolutely blow your minds off. Because I don't know if you guys have heard about this event that takes place in the location where Jesus was crucified. And after he was crucified, his body was kept in a tomb where pilgrims are allowed to go in there and worship and pay their respect to Jesus. And you actually get to see the location in which his body was literally kept after he was dead. On this particular day, every single year in Jerusalem, something crazy happens. For there's this miracle that followers of Jesus, anyone that believes in him, anyone that has 100% faith and believes in Christ, all they need to do is simply just buy a candle and go stand at this location, and you will magically see that your candle will automatically light up as soon as the Holy Spirit descends into the tomb of Jesus in that particular time when the resurrection happened 2,000 years ago, which is now currently known as the day of Easter. And what's actually interesting is that entire Jerusalem and all the candles around them are automatically going to be burning on its own. And the best part about this holy miracle, it just never burns anybody, even if you touch it, or even if you try to put a tissue paper, even those paper doesn't get burned. Your clothes doesn't get burned. People actually tried this out with their beards, their clothes, their hands. Nothing happens as long as the presence of Holy Spirit remains, which is supposed to be for a couple of minutes, where the legend says that the Holy Spirit of God comes down in there during the time of resurrection every year. And one of the most weird things that I've noticed, and the reason why I really wanted to come out and share this whole thing, because I think a lot of people don't really know about these incredible miracles. And I believe, coming from a non-Christian background and non-Christian family, I myself never knew about this stuff until one of my sister's friends who's been to Jerusalem and got to take a look at this event. He spoke to me about this miracle that happens in Jerusalem, and I was very fascinated to learn more about this stuff. So I went online, started searching for videos, and I was mind blown to see what actually happens in here every single year during the time of Easter. That's when the resurrection of Jesus Christ happened in that exact location. Now, there are plenty of videos out there, and this is actually one of my most favorite ones, because this dude is actually trying to burn his own beard, and literally nothing happens when he does that. And it only doesn't burn those people who have complete faith in how this thing works. I don't know whatever he's talking. Look at that stuff. He is literally burning. He's literally burning his beard.
Wow. Wow, look at that, guys.
Burning his hand, nothing happens. It's one of the best clips that I've seen so far. Damn.
See, baby, you want to see God? There's God in action.
And I think that needs a lot of faith, by the way. And if you guys are not aware of how this thing works, it's basically very similar to the biblical story of how Simon tries to walk on the water. And initially he starts walking on the sea, and then he starts doubting, and then his faith breaks down. And that's when Simon starts drowning. So it's all about faith. And that's basically how this whole thing works in Jerusalem as well. So if you are someone that hasn't visited this place, I really, really want to go ahead and visit, especially take a look at this miracle that only happens in Easter. I really hope sometime in the future I get to do it. I don't know how things works. I've heard that they usually don't allow people from outside. And
don't buy another toothbrush until you see what this one can do for you. It takes just 30 seconds to use. And
baby, you're not going to get...
There's a lot of complicated stuff. We also have another crazy clip I want to show you guys. Just take a look at...
Baby, you're not going to pull any women with a dish full of, sink full of dishes.
This clip right here, right? There are people that are actually trying to burn their...
This is actually crazy, isn't it, guys? I've never heard of this.
cloth. And this woman that I've seen, she's literally burning a cloth. It's basically a thin netted cloth, as far as I can know. It's a linen cloth, and it doesn't burn at all. She's literally just putting in there all the fire, and as you can see, she just keeps using it over and over, and her cloth just turns.
Oh, I wonder if that's how God done the burning bush, because a bush would be consumed pretty quickly. Wow, I think I'm right there.
Black as well, and as you can see, nothing happens. The fire doesn't hurt anybody at all, and that's the basic miracle that goes on. And people in Jerusalem say that it's because of the resurrection and the Holy Spirit of Christ comes back again. When the Holy Spirit of Christ starts to visit the location in which his resurrection happened, that's when the entire city and Israel gets blessed from God himself. So during this time, it seems like nobody gets harmed, and that's one of the most craziest things.
Baby, I'm Australian, and you pommies is what we call English. We always said use people. Oh wait, yeah, I'll say it. We always said use people don't shower.
That
like you say the French don't, we say you don't.
I have ever seen so far. And
not you, but the English people.
This is apparently how these things happen, right? There are people gathered all around, and everyone's candles and torchlights just starts lighting up on its own. And this happens on Easter, man. That's just crazy. One of the best miracles that I've seen. Look at that stuff. It's not like they light it up on their own. It basically lights up.
Tell you, it could be fake fire, but I've never heard of fake fire like that doesn't burn. It's not like they've got a curler wand in their hand and it's coming from the curler wand. I don't know. I think that was interesting, and I think it's probably true.
On its own, and nobody knows how it happens, and that's basically what the miracle is all about. This is basically where Jesus was placed after the crucifixion. So this was like the tomb in which they have now kind of built a small temple or an altar where people basically go in there to pay their respects. Obviously, idol worshiping, not something he recommends, but yeah, it's really crazy that we have some of these historical places that still exist. And this is where the light basically comes inside on its own in this particular time. So the priest basically goes inside, and they're supposed to not look at the spirit, because anyone that looks at the Spirit of God ends up dead. So they make sure that they're not supposed to look at the spirit. But then there's this one person who's supposed to like be extremely pure or whatever the culture is. So they basically send him inside. He carries this candle, and apparently the Holy Spirit just descends in there. The holy fire has.
Baby, you got no heat, have you? Your heat's playing up. So I understand you're not having a bath with your heat out like that.
Begun. Everyone's candles just starts burning on its own. And after that, what's crazy is that all the different
I couldn't help it. I'd have to do a cat wash. I'd have to get a towel and rub myself over and clean myself.
From across the world, they basically carry out this lamp in a completely secure box just to make sure that the blessing of God reaches all over the world. So that's basically how it works every single year. So I was really fascinated by one of these miracles that's happening. And now that we are very close to Easter, tomorrow is Good Friday. That's when Jesus was crucified. So I thought, why not go ahead and share this message and let people know what actually happens on Easter. And it's not just something that people blindly believe on. There are some historical evidence, and there are some miracles that also happens along with it, even till this very day. And right now in 2025, I think if you're lucky enough, we'll once again see another holy fire that's going to happen just 3 days from this video. Now, of course, if you get any footage of this whole event, I'll of course share all of it on this channel so that you guys can keep yourself informed with all of these miracles, prophecies, and everything that's currently coming true. Now, a lot of people claim that this could end up being fake. They could be using some sort of a chemical in the candles that they're using inside the church.